Hello, this is Christine Zeitler with Prendergast Library, and today I'm going to be showing you how to needle felt a snowman. Some of the supplies are extremely simple. Actually, all of the supplies are extremely simple. You need some wool. In this case, I've got some black, some yellow, and some white. You need needle felting needles. We have three sizes here. There's a large one for coarse work, a medium one for slightly finer work, and then a small one for the finest work, and then a piece of needle felting foam. What you need to remember about the needles are they're actually quite sharp. The tip is extremely sharp and there are barbs running up and down. The barbs tangle the wool, which causes it to felt. So what we're going to do is get started. I have two kinds of wool here. This is Corriedale, it's a little bit coarser, and then this is a merino blend, it's a little bit finer. So I'm going to start with the Corriedale to make the core. Our snowman is going to be made of two different sized balls. So to get started, we're going to take a piece of the wool and just start wrapping it into a ball. Wrap it up pretty tightly. I'm going to start around one finger and then just kind of keep wrapping it, again, pretty tightly. It's not going to be too much like a ball at first. Then once you have it at approximately a ball, I'm going to take the, there you go, I'm going to take the coarse needle and start stabbing into it. I'm only going to stab towards the middle. I'm not going to stab all the way through, because what we want to do is we want to get everything tangled into the middle. If you stab through, then you're going to wind up with something a little bit closer to a flat piece than a round one. Just keep turning it. I'm going to start by trying to get the ends kind of felted down a little bit. You want to make sure that you're stabbing up and down. If you bend, you're going to risk snapping the needle, and you're going to want to keep your fingers pretty well out of the way. That's why we're doing it onto the foam instead of in mid-air. If you stab in mid-air, you're much more likely to stab yourself. And we're going to keep going. As you can see, after just a few stabs and just a few seconds really, it's already starting to hold together a little bit. It's starting to form its shape a little bit. And the more you do, the more you stab, the harder the piece is going to be. By turning it constantly, I'm much more likely to keep it fairly round. Only just going to do a bit to make sure that it's going to hold together and stay in approximately the right shape. So that's the first piece. Now I'm going to take a slightly bigger piece of wool to make the second piece, and this is going to be the body. Again, I'm just going to wrap it up and then just keep rolling it. Turn it sometimes, twist it a little bit, try and make it into a vaguely round shape. Once it's in a vaguely round shape, we're going to put the first one off to one side and get started on this one. Again, we're only stabbing about halfway through, trying to get it to hold still. This one's going to take a few extra minutes because it's a bigger piece. You can go at an angle, but again, you always want to keep the needle straight. You do not want to bend the needle while it's in the wool. It will snap it, and that's no fun trying to find a snap needle. See some loose pieces, some lumpy pieces, just keep stabbing. now that it's holding itself together, it's still pretty springy because I don't want it to be hard as a rock. And then I'll put his little head on him. Whoop, there goes his head. There we go. Okay, so there's his head and his body. Now, to attach it, you've got a couple of different options. You can just hold the head on to the body, stab it straight through, and keep going like that, and hope that after a few stabs, it attaches. You can see it's holding on already. I wouldn't actually pull at it because it will come apart. It's on there pretty loosely. You can keep doing that. I'm going to use a scarf, but before I do that, I'm going to give him a few facial features. Now, at this point, you have several options. You can start using the slightly finer needle and start stabbing in. Well, to do that, you would want to attach the head to the body a little bit more first. There we go. Okay, there. And you can use the next size down needle and start refining it a little bit. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a very, very, very tiny piece of the black wool. I know it looks a little more purple. Black is extremely hard to dye. So I'm going to take a tiny little piece of the black wool and then just squish it down into a ball. Really tiny balls are really hard to make. There we go. Okay. That's pretty much as small as I'm going to get that with my hands. And then start putting it in as an eye. I know, it looks huge, but as you start stabbing it in, you can use the tip of your needle to push it towards the middle and stab. And towards the middle and stab. And the more you push it in towards the middle, the smaller it gets. Okay, so that's one eye. Let's make another one. Takes a really tiny amount of wool. Okay, and then we'll put another eye on there. Okay, and I will be the first to admit, even with that, he still looks a little bug-eyed. So what we can do is you can take some white. Yeah, his little head came off, so we'll have to attach that with a scarf. You can take some white and kind of try and modify and wrap around and make the eyes look smaller. What I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of hide the eyes a little bit. So I'm going to do two things. So the head kind of came off. You can see it's still attached a little bit. So we're going to attach it a little bit more firmly. Again, we'll start by stabbing it down in. Okay. And then I'm going to use an accessory. So I'm going to take the yellow wool that I have. We've got a lot of different colors of wool. And I'm going to make a scarf. So I'm just going to take a piece of wool and start needle felting. I'm going to push it so that it's pretty densely packed together. By pulling it, the strands kind of come together, and then start needle felting. after a few stabs, I'm going to pull it up so that it doesn't stick to the felt, to the foam, and then I'm going to turn it over and start on the other side. I'm going to focus on needle felting in the middle and leaving the ends a little bit fluffy and airy so that it's kind of like a scarf with fringe. Again, pull it up after a few stabs, flip it over, and keep going. Okay, you can feel that it's starting to come together, starting to stick together. I'm going to move on to a slightly finer needle, and you can see the holes aren't quite as big when I'm doing this, when I'm stabbing with this needle, even though it does still make visible holes. Okay, peel this up, turn it over. I'll do one more batch, because it's holding together pretty well. There we go. I like how that scarf looks. It's held together in the middle, it's fluffy on the ends. So now we're going to take our snowman and wrap the scarf around. I'm going to wrap it so that it's covering the join, and then coming up around the front. There we go. I can pull that down so that it fluffs over there, and a little bit of fluff. And I like how that looks personally. So again, I'm actually going to go with the medium needle this time, and I'm going to stab where the two parts of the scarf join, and then around the neck. So right there to get the scarf to join on, and then start stabbing a little bit so that you're stabbing into the head to get that to join, and then so that you're stabbing into the body. So the scarf is going to help join the head to the body. It's going to be a bit of a bridge. And you're going to do that all around to help join it so that it's not going to, the head isn't going to pop off on you. You don't want your kids seeing that, or grandkids, or anybody really. There we go. Okay. So now he has a scarf. So that's helped with the joining. I can hold him by his head. He's not coming off. I can give it a gentle tug. I don't want to yank at it because it will come off eventually if you pull hard enough. So now he's joined. Doesn't really stop him from being a little bug-eyed though. So what we're going to do is we're going to give him a hat. I'm going to use the orange wool again. The first part of the hat that I'm going to make, it's going to wind up being something like a top hat. So I'm going to start with a brim. I'm going to take a piece of wool and then fold in the ends a little bit. And then start stabbing. I'm going to start with the coarse needle just to get things started. And you can use the tip of your needle. I'm going to make it vaguely circular. And you can see as you're stabbing, the wool is shrinking a little bit. So needle felting does compact your wool some, so you have to be aware of that. Now you can see this is pretty much transparent, so it's still a little too, the layer of wool is a little too thin. So while it's still soft, while it's still malleable, I'm going to add something on. I'm actually going to add some of the black because it's going to be on the underside, so it'll kind of look like a lining to the hat brim. So stab a little bit. I'm going to stab around the edges. And then a bit more in the middle. Get the pieces kind of stuck on there. After little bit of stabbing. You want to turn it over. I'm going to move on to the slightly finer needle because now that it's coarsely put together, we want to give it a little bit of opportunity to smooth out a touch. If you want your piece to look very refined in the end, you can move on to the very fine needle and try and get all of the little fuzzies down. Now, one of the things that you're going to see is that the colors are starting to bleed through a little bit. You can see some of the black coming through the yellow because as you stab, you're pushing the fibers down to entangle. That's okay in this case because this is the hat and it's not going to look perfect in the end anyway. But if you wanted yours to look perfect, you could choose a different shape of hat. You could make the brim a little bit smaller, or you could just use one color. So this is the brim of my hat. Could do that. It would look interesting. Kind of like a snow cap or something. I'm going to give it a little bit of a topper. So I'm going to try and see if I can make something like a top hat. Don't have a lot of wool, but it should be enough to give it something like a top hat look. So I'm going to make a cylinder and just needle felt it in. Just enough to stick together a little bit. And then the end, just a little bit. You can see there's a hollow space in the middle where my finger was, which means that it's a little bit harder to get the fibers to entangle. There we go. Okay, a little bit more around the edges. I like how that looks. And so I'm going to attach it to the brim. Now, the brim is a little too big for my hat, for my head, so I could use scissors to trim it, or I can just fold it under a little bit because I left it soft. It isn't rock hard. I've left it a little bit soft, so I can fold it under a little bit. And adjust the size and the shape some. As long as you don't felt it to the point of it being rock hard, you can still make adjustments. Okay, we will peel that off. We'll see how it looks. That's a little bit better. Kind of fits with the head a little bit more. We can give it a jaunty tilt so that it covers up the eye a bit. And I'm going to put the top on. Just stab straight down to try and get it to attach. Pull it off. See how that looks? I like how that looks. I'm going to refine it a little bit. Try and get, I'm going to stab down around the bottom edges to get it to really attach to the hat, to the brim. And that'll let me keep the top still pretty puffy while getting a good attachment. There we go. And again, no part of this is rock hard. Even the head, it's a little hard, but it isn't rock hard. So I'm still able to attach the hat without having to worry about anything extra like glue. Now, I could do it so that the little bit of black is there by the brim. I could do it here where there's a little bit more yellow. In fact, that's what I'm going to do because it gives it a little bit of overhang. So I'm going to hold it on with a couple of fingers, keep my snowman upright, and stab down to attach the hat to the head. Now, since I like this attached sort of down on the sides, kind of like earmuffs, I'm going to do that. So I'm going to attach that to the side a little bit. And then over here, I like how it curves into the head a little bit. So I'm going to attach it there so that it stays exactly where I want it to be. You want to be a little bit gentle because you don't want to jostle the head off of the body. And I'm going to keep attaching it so that it's all the way down on the back. There we go. And now I have a jaunty snowman with a yellow scarf and a yellow hat. You can do anything that you'd like. We would love to see your creations on the Prendergast Library Facebook page. So get to needle felting and enjoy. Happy holidays.